In the heart of a bustling city filled with lights, sounds, and endless activity stood the Grand Legacy Hotel, an iconic landmark that had been welcoming travelers for decades. Known for its grand architecture, luxurious rooms, and exceptional service, the hotel was more than just a place to stay. It was a symbol of elegance and hospitality. Tourists from around the world flocked to it, and locals often recommended it as the best spot in town for important events or relaxing getaways. For years, the hotel had thrived under the leadership of its previous owner, but recent changes were about to shake things up in ways no one could have predicted. The hotel had recently been sold to a new owner, a decision that came as a surprise to many. The identity of this mysterious buyer was kept under wraps during the transition period. Staff members whispered among themselves, speculating about who the new owner might be. Some thought it was a wealthy entrepreneur looking to expand their business empire, while others believed it could be a celebrity seeking a quiet investment opportunity. Whatever the truth, excitement buzzed through the hallways as everyone wondered how this change would affect their daily lives. At the center of all this was Michael Carter, the hotel's manager. Michael was known for his sharp suits, confident demeanor, and strict adherence to rules. He ran the hotel like a well-oiled machine, ensuring everything operated smoothly without a hitch. Guests praised his efficiency, and employees respected his authority, even if they sometimes found him intimidating. But beneath his polished exterior lay deeply held personal beliefs, particularly when it came to politics. Michael wasn't shy about sharing his opinions, though he usually kept them out of the workplace. However, recent tensions in the country had made political topics unavoidable, even in professional settings. One sunny afternoon, as the lobby buzzed with guests checking in and out, a man walked through the revolving doors. He wore a red hat emblazoned with bold white letters that read MAGA. The sight of the hat immediately drew attention. Some guests glanced curiously, while others exchanged knowing looks. It wasn't uncommon for people to wear such symbols, but in today's climate, they often spark strong reactions, both positive and negative. The man seemed unfazed by the subtle commotion he caused, casually approaching the front desk with a small suitcase in hand. Meanwhile, Michael stood nearby, observing the scene unfold. His eyes locked onto the hat, and his jaw tightened ever so slightly. Though he tried to maintain his composure, a wave of irritation washed over him. To Michael, the hat represented ideas he strongly opposed, and seeing it in his hotel felt like an intrusion. He couldn't help but wonder why someone would choose to wear it in such a public setting. As the man handed his ID and credit card to the receptionist, Michael stepped forward, ready to intervene. Little did he know, this seemingly ordinary encounter would spiral into something far bigger than either of them could imagine. The air grew tense as Michael approached the desk, his mind racing with thoughts and judgments. What started as a routine check-in was about to become a pivotal moment, not just for the guest, but for the entire Grand Legacy Hotel. Unbeknownst to Michael, the man wearing the hat carried a secret that would soon turn the tables on everyone involved. The man at the front desk handed over his identification and credit card with a calm smile, seemingly unaware of the ripple he had caused simply by walking into the hotel. His name was Jonathan Reed, as the receptionist confirmed after glancing at his ID. Everything appeared normal. His reservation was in order, and there were no issues with payment. Yet Michael's presence loomed large behind the receptionist, his posture stiff and his expression unreadable. The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough for anyone nearby to sense that something was amiss. "Is there a problem?" Jonathan asked politely, noticing Michael's intense gaze. His tone was friendly, almost disarming, but Michael didn't soften. Instead, he leaned slightly forward, placing his hands on the edge of the counter. "I'm sorry, sir," Michael began, his voice clipped and formal, "but I must ask, are you planning to cause any disruptions during your stay here? This is a family-friendly establishment, and we aim to ensure all our guests feel comfortable." Jonathan blinked, taken aback by the question. He glanced around the lobby, where a few curious onlookers had paused mid-conversation, to watch the exchange. A couple standing near the seating area whispered to each other, their eyes flicking between Michael and Jonathan. Clearly, this wasn't going unnoticed. "No, I'm not," Jonathan replied evenly, though his brow furrowed in confusion. "I just want a room like anyone else. Why would you think I'd cause trouble?" Michael hesitated for a moment, his gaze dropping briefly to the red hat still perched atop Jonathan's head. In his mind, the hat itself was enough reason to doubt the man's intentions. To Michael, it represented divisiveness, a symbol of beliefs he strongly disagreed with. He couldn't shake the feeling that allowing someone wearing it to stay might upset other guests or create unnecessary tension within the hotel. "This isn't personal," Michael continued, his tone firm now. "But some people might find your attire offensive. We pride ourselves on maintaining a welcoming environment for everyone, and unfortunately, your choice of headwear could make others uncomfortable." Jonathan straightened up, his polite demeanor shifting slightly. There was no anger in his voice, but a hint of frustration crept in. "With all due respect, my hat doesn't define me or my behavior. I'm here as a paying customer, not to stir up trouble. If someone has an issue with what I'm wearing, that's their prerogative, but it shouldn't affect whether I'm allowed to stay." The two men locked eyes, neither backing down. The lobby grew quieter as more guests stopped to observe the unfolding drama. Some nodded sympathetically toward Michael, agreeing with his stance, while others frowned, clearly siding with Jonathan. It was clear that opinions were divided, even among those watching silently from afar. Finally, Michael broke the silence. "Sir, I regret to inform you that under these circumstances, I cannot allow you to check in. Please gather your belongings and leave the premises immediately." For a moment, Jonathan looked stunned. Then, slowly, he reached for his wallet and retrieved his ID and credit card from the receptionist. His movements were deliberate, controlled, as if he were trying to keep his emotions in check. As he turned away from the desk, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some people shook their heads in disapproval, while others muttered support for Michael's decision. But before Jonathan could take more than a few steps toward the exit, another figure entered the scene. Ms. Evelyn Price, the hotel's longtime legal advisor, strode into the lobby, her sharp heels clicking against the marble floor. She had arrived earlier than expected to finalize some paperwork related to the ownership transition. Spotting the commotion, she approached quickly, her expression one of concern. "What's going on here?" Evelyn asked, her voice carrying authority. When no one answered right away, she turned to Jonathan, who still held his belongings in hand. Sensing an opportunity to explain himself, Jonathan introduced himself, not as a disgruntled guest, but as the new owner of the Grand Legacy Hotel. Evelyn froze, her eyes widening in shock as the weight of the situation hit her. What had started as a simple check-in had spiraled into a potential disaster, and Michael had no idea what he had just done. Evelyn's face went pale as Jonathan introduced himself. Her mind raced, piecing together the gravity of what had just transpired. The man Michael had so rudely dismissed wasn't just another guest. He was Jonathan Reed, the new owner of the Grand Legacy Hotel. Evelyn quickly recovered her composure, but her sharp eyes darted toward Michael, who stood frozen behind the front desk, oblivious to the bombshell that had just been dropped. "Mr. Reed," Evelyn said firmly, stepping forward to intervene. "I'm Evelyn Price, the hotel's legal advisor. Please accept my sincerest apologies for this misunderstanding." She extended a hand, which Jonathan shook cautiously, his expression still tinged with frustration. Turning to Michael, Evelyn's tone shifted from polite to stern. "Michael, may I speak with you privately for a moment?" Without waiting for an answer, she gestured for him to follow her away from the growing audience of curious onlookers. Guests and staff alike were whispering among themselves, speculating about what was happening. Some craned their necks to catch a glimpse of Jonathan, while others openly gawked at Michael, whose confidence seemed to be faltering. Once they were out of earshot, Evelyn lowered her voice but didn't mask her anger. "Do you have any idea who that man is?" she demanded, her words cutting through the air like a knife. Michael shook his head, clearly confused. "That's Jonathan Reed, the new owner of this hotel. You just kicked out your boss, Michael. Do you understand how serious this is?" Michael's jaw dropped. For a moment, he looked as though he might protest, but the realization hit him hard. His shoulders slumped, and his usual air of authority vanished. I didn't know," he stammered. "If I'd known." "But you didn't bother to find out," Evelyn interrupted sharply. "Instead, you made assumptions based on nothing more than what he was wearing. That kind of behavior isn't just unprofessional, it's unacceptable, especially in a place like this, where we're supposed to treat every guest with respect." Back in the lobby, Jonathan stood quietly, observing the exchange between Evelyn and Michael. Though he tried to remain calm, it was clear he was processing the weight of the situation. He hadn't expected such hostility during his first visit to the hotel, especially not from someone in a leadership position. Still, he appreciated Evelyn's quick intervention. She returned to him shortly, her demeanor now apologetic and composed. "Mr. Reed, once again, I deeply apologize for this incident," Evelyn said, her tone sincere. "Please allow me to personally assist you with your check-in. If there's anything else we can do to make your stay more comfortable, don't hesitate to let us know." Jonathan nodded slowly, though his expression remained guarded. "Thank you, Ms. Price. I appreciate your efforts to rectify this. But I think it's clear that there are some issues here that need addressing, not just with the staff, but also with the culture of this establishment." Evelyn nodded solemnly. "You're absolutely right, and I assure you this will be dealt with promptly. Your vision for the hotel is important to us, and we'll make sure everyone understands that." As Evelyn escorted Jonathan to a private elevator reserved for VIP guests, Michael watched from afar, his stomach churning with dread. The reality of his actions was sinking in, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he had made a catastrophic mistake. The whispers around him grew louder, and he could feel the weight of judgment from both colleagues and guests. For Jonathan, the encounter was unsettling but also eye-opening. He hadn't planned to reveal his identity so soon, but the situation left him no choice. Now, as he stepped into the elevator with Evelyn, he resolved to use this moment as an opportunity, not just to address the shortcomings of the hotel's management, but also to set a new standard for inclusivity and professionalism. Little did he know, the fallout from this incident would ripple far beyond the confines of the lobby, forcing everyone involved to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and the institution they represented. The next morning, Jonathan called an emergency meeting in the hotel's grand conference room. The space, usually reserved for high-profile events or corporate gatherings, now buzzed with tension as senior management and key staff members filed in, their faces a mix of curiosity and unease. Michael sat at the far end of the table, his hands clasped tightly together, avoiding eye contact with anyone. He knew this meeting was about him and the fallout from the previous day's incident, but he wasn't prepared for what was coming. Jonathan entered the room calmly, dressed in a tailored suit that exuded authority. His expression was neutral, but there was a quiet intensity in his eyes that made everyone sit up straighter. Evelyn stood beside him, her presence adding weight to the seriousness of the occasion. As Jonathan took his seat at the head of the table, the room fell silent, all eyes fixed on him. "Thank you all for coming," Jonathan began, his voice steady and measured. "I'm sure by now most of you are aware of what happened yesterday in the lobby. For those who aren't, let me summarize. A guest, me, was denied service because of assumptions made about my appearance. This isn't just a personal issue. It's a reflection of how we operate as a business." He paused, letting his words sink in. Some attendees shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, while others exchanged nervous glances. Jonathan continued, his tone firm but not accusatory. "The Grand Legacy Hotel has built its reputation on providing exceptional hospitality to everyone who walks through our doors. But yesterday we failed, not only the guest involved, but also ourselves, and the values we claim to uphold. Michael swallowed hard, his throat dry. He wanted to defend himself, to explain that he had acted out of concern for the comfort of other guests, but the words stuck in his throat. He glanced around the room, searching for support, but found none. Even his closest colleagues avoided meeting his gaze. Jonathan turned his attention directly to Michael. "Mr. Carter, your actions were unacceptable. You judged someone based on their appearance and allowed your personal biases to dictate your behavior. That's not leadership, that's discrimination, and it has no place here." Michael opened his mouth to respond, but Jonathan held up a hand, signaling him to remain silent. "I understand that people have opinions, and I respect that. But when you're in a position of authority, those opinions cannot interfere with your responsibilities. Your job is to ensure every guest feels welcome, regardless of who they are or what they wear. Yesterday, you failed in that duty." The room was so quiet you could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning. Michael's face flushed red, embarrassment and shame washing over him. He nodded slowly, unable to argue against Jonathan's reasoning. Deep down, he knew the truth of the matter. He had let his emotions cloud his judgment, and the consequences were undeniable. Jonathan leaned forward, addressing the entire group. "This isn't just about Mr. Carter. It's about all of us. We need to reevaluate how we treat our guests and each other. Inclusivity isn't just a buzzword. It's a core value that must guide everything we do. Moving forward, I'll be implementing new training programs focused on diversity, empathy, and professionalism. These aren't optional. They're mandatory." As he spoke, Jonathan's tone softened slightly, but his message remained clear. "I don't want anyone here to feel attacked. My goal isn't to punish, but to improve. Together, we can turn this into an opportunity for growth. But if anyone can't commit to these principles, then this may not be the right place for them." With that, Jonathan dismissed the meeting, leaving the room in stunned silence. Michael lingered behind, staring at the empty chair where Jonathan had sat. He knew his career at the hotel was over, not because Jonathan had fired him yet, but because he couldn't face the idea of rebuilding trust after such a public failure. For the first time in years, Michael felt truly powerless, unsure of what lay ahead. Meanwhile, Jonathan stepped out into the lobby, ready to begin the long process of restoring the hotel's reputation and proving that change was possible. In the weeks that followed, Jonathan wasted no time in setting his plans into motion. The Grand Legacy Hotel became a hub of transformation, not just in appearance, but in spirit. His first order of business was to address the staff directly. He held a series of town hall meetings where employees at every level, from housekeeping to front desk clerks to senior managers, were invited to share their thoughts and concerns. These sessions weren't just about airing grievances, they were about fostering open communication and rebuilding trust. At one such meeting, a young receptionist named Lisa spoke up hesitantly. "I've worked here for 3 years, and I love this hotel," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "But sometimes it feels like we're expected to follow rules without really understanding why. Like we're told to smile and be polite, but what happens when someone makes us uncomfortable, or when we see something unfair?" Her question hung in the air, and Jonathan nodded thoughtfully. "That's a valid concern, Lisa," he replied. "Hospitality isn't just about following rules. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels respected, including our team. If you ever feel unsure about how to handle a situation, don't hesitate to ask for guidance. We're here to support each other." To reinforce this message, Jonathan introduced comprehensive training programs focused on diversity, empathy, and conflict resolution. Led by experienced facilitators, these workshops encouraged staff members to reflect on their own biases and learn how to navigate challenging scenarios with professionalism. Role-playing exercises allowed participants to practice handling difficult situations, such as dealing with guests who expressed controversial opinions or displayed behavior that could make others uneasy. Slowly but surely, the culture within the hotel began to shift. Jonathan also took steps to engage with the broader community. He launched a guest feedback initiative, inviting visitors to share their experiences through anonymous surveys. This wasn't just a formality. It was a genuine effort to understand how the hotel was perceived from the outside. To encourage honest responses, Jonathan promised that every piece of feedback would be reviewed personally. Within days, the inbox was flooded with comments ranging from glowing praise to constructive criticism. One guest wrote, "I've stayed at your hotel multiple times, but yesterday I noticed a real difference in how the staff interacted with me. It felt like they truly cared." These small victories fueled Jonathan's determination to keep pushing forward. He also made it a point to be more visible around the property, walking through the halls, greeting guests, and chatting with employees. His approachable demeanor helped humanize him, breaking down the barriers that often existed between ownership and staff. Over lunch breaks, kitchen workers would occasionally spot him sitting in the cafeteria, eating alongside them, and asking about their day. These moments might have seemed minor, but they sent a powerful message. Everyone mattered. Meanwhile, Michael's absence loomed large over the hotel. Though he hadn't officially resigned yet, he rarely showed up for work, and when he did, his usual confidence was replaced by quiet resignation. Rumors swirled about his fate, but Jonathan refused to comment publicly, focusing instead on moving the hotel forward. Behind closed doors, however, he met with Evelyn to discuss next steps. "He's been with us for years," Evelyn said cautiously during one of their conversations. "Firing him outright might look harsh, especially to longtime employees who respect him." Jonathan sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know, but keeping him in a leadership role sends the wrong message. People need to see that accountability matters. Maybe we can offer him severance and help him transition into something else. It doesn't have to be punitive. It's about doing what's best for the hotel." Eventually, a decision was reached. Michael would step down from his position, effective immediately, but with a generous severance package and access to career counseling services. When the announcement was made, reactions were mixed. Some felt it was the right call, while others sympathized with Michael, acknowledging that anyone could make a mistake under pressure. Still, the consensus was clear. The incident had become a turning point, forcing everyone to reevaluate their priorities. As the weeks turned into months, the changes began to take root. Guests noticed a renewed warmth in the service, and employee morale improved significantly. The Grand Center_Hotel. Months passed, and the Grand Legacy Hotel continued its journey of transformation under Jonathan's leadership. The changes weren't just surface level. They ran deep, touching every corner of the establishment. Yet, as the hotel moved forward, Michael Carter found himself struggling to rebuild his life after the fallout. News of the incident had spread beyond the hotel walls, reaching industry circles and making headlines in local media. For someone who had once been so respected in his field, the sudden shift was devastating. Michael spent his days sending out resumes, attending interviews, and trying to explain away the gap in his employment history. But no matter how polished his answers were, potential employers always seemed to know about the MAGA hat incident. Some rejected him outright, while others gave vague excuses about not being the right fit. It became painfully clear that his actions, or rather, his lack of professionalism, had tarnished his reputation. What hurt most wasn't just the loss of job opportunities, but the realization that he had let his biases blind him to basic human decency. One afternoon, Michael sat alone in a small cafe, staring at yet another rejection email on his phone. He felt a mix of anger, shame, and frustration bubbling inside him. For years, he had prided himself on his ability to lead, to command respect, and to maintain order. Now, he couldn't even secure an entry-level position at a mid-tier hotel. As he sipped his coffee, he overheard two patrons nearby discussing the very incident that had derailed his career. "I heard about that guy," one of them said. "Kicking someone out because of a hat. That's not management. That's just plain prejudice." The other person nodded. Yeah, it's sad though. I bet he didn't think it would blow up like that. One bad decision can ruin everything. Their words stung, but they also forced Michael to confront the truth. His downfall wasn't caused by bad luck or external forces. It was self-inflicted. He had allowed his personal beliefs to override his professional responsibilities, and now he was paying the price. For the first time, he began to see the bigger picture, not just for himself, but for the world around him. Maybe it wasn't about agreeing with everyone or liking what they stood for. Maybe it was simply about treating people with fairness and respect, regardless of differences. Meanwhile, Jonathan was thriving in his role as the new owner of the Grand Legacy Hotel. Under his guidance, the property had become more than just a place to stay. It was a symbol of progress and inclusivity. Guests raved about the improved service, and employees praised the positive work environment. Jonathan often reflected on the irony of the situation. If Michael hadn't acted so rashly, he might never have revealed his identity as the owner so soon. And if that hadn't happened, the sweeping changes he implemented might not have been prioritized. Jonathan understood that growth came from challenges, both personal and institutional. He made it a point to visit staff meetings regularly, sharing stories of resilience and emphasizing the importance of learning from mistakes. During one such session, he addressed the team candidly. "Let me be clear, I'm not perfect, and neither is this hotel. We've all made errors in judgment, including myself. But what defines us isn't our failures. It's how we respond to them. Every day is a chance to do better, to be better." His words resonated deeply with those who listened. Even Lisa, the young receptionist who had spoken up during the town hall meeting, approached him afterward. "Thank you for saying that," she said softly. "It's easy to feel discouraged when things go wrong, but hearing you talk about second chances gives me hope." As the months rolled on, Jonathan noticed subtle shifts in the hotel's atmosphere. Employees interacted with guests and each other with greater warmth and understanding. Complaints dwindled, and glowing reviews poured in. The hotel's reputation soared, attracting visitors from all walks of life. Inclusivity wasn't just a policy anymore. It was part of the fabric of the organization. Yet, despite the success, Jonathan remained humble. He knew the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but he was committed to staying true to the values he believed in. Change, he realized, wasn't something that happened overnight. It required patience, effort, and a willingness to embrace discomfort. And while the scars of the past would always linger, they served as reminders of how far they'd come and how much further they could go together. 1 year after the incident that had shaken the Grand Legacy Hotel to its core, the property hosted a gala to celebrate its remarkable turnaround. The event was held in the hotel's grand ballroom, transformed for the occasion into a dazzling space filled with twinkling lights, elegant floral arrangements, and soft music drifting through the air. Employees, guests, local dignitaries, and business leaders gathered under one roof, united by a shared appreciation for how far the hotel had come. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement as people mingled, exchanged stories, and marveled at the transformation of an establishment once clouded by controversy. Jonathan stood at the center of it all, dressed impeccably in a navy blue suit. He greeted attendees with a warm smile, shaking hands and thanking them for their support over the past year. Though he had always been confident in his vision, even he couldn't have predicted just how profoundly the changes would resonate, not only within the hotel, but also in the wider community. As the clock struck 8, signaling the start of formal speeches, Jonathan stepped onto the stage, the spotlight illuminating him as murmurs of anticipation rippled through the crowd. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice steady and sincere. "Tonight is a celebration of resilience, growth, and unity. 1 year ago, this hotel faced a challenge that tested our values and forced us to reevaluate who we are and what we stand for. It wasn't easy, but together, we turned that challenge into an opportunity to learn, to improve, and to become something greater than we were before." He paused, letting his words sink in. Many in the audience nodded in agreement, recalling the difficult months that followed the incident. Jonathan continued, his tone reflective yet optimistic. We've learned that hospitality isn't just about providing luxury or convenience. It's about creating a space where everyone feels welcome, respected, and valued. That's what makes this hotel special, and I'm proud to say that each and every one of you has played a part in making that vision a reality. As he spoke, Jonathan's eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on Evelyn, who stood near the back with a small, approving smile. She had been instrumental in guiding him through the transition period, offering wisdom and support when he needed it most. Nearby, Lisa, the young receptionist who had once voiced her concerns so bravely, beamed with pride, knowing she had contributed to the positive shift. Even former skeptics among the staff now wore expressions of satisfaction, proof that change was possible when people worked together. The highlight of the evening came when Jonathan invited several employees to share their experiences. One housekeeper recounted how the new training programs had empowered her to handle challenging situations with confidence. A bellhop described the camaraderie he felt among coworkers, a stark contrast to the tension that had once permeated the halls. Their heartfelt testimonials drew applause from the audience, reinforcing the idea that progress wasn't just about policies, it was about people. Later, as the gala wound down and guests lingered over dessert, Jonathan took a quiet moment to reflect. Standing by the window, he gazed out at the city skyline, illuminated against the night sky. Evelyn joined him, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "You did it," she said simply, handing him one of the glasses. "This place is thriving because of your leadership." Jonathan shook his head modestly. "Not just mine," he replied. "Everyone here deserves credit, including you. If you hadn't intervened that day, things might have gone very differently." Evelyn chuckled softly. "True, but don't sell yourself short. You saw potential in this hotel, and in its people, when others might have given up. That takes courage." They clinked their glasses, savoring the moment. For Jonathan, the gala wasn't just a milestone. It was a reminder that growth often comes from adversity. While scars remained from Michael's departure to the initial backlash, the hotel had emerged stronger, more united, and more committed to its mission than ever before. As the final notes of music faded and the last guests departed, Jonathan walked through the lobby, now bustling with happy travelers. He paused for a moment, taking in the scene. The Grand Legacy Hotel wasn't just a building. It was a testament to the power of understanding, accountability, and second chances. And as long as those values endured, he knew the hotel would continue to shine brightly, welcoming all who crossed its threshold.